no signs of forced entry. Folks, that's a myth. No signs of forced entry. At that time, there were 8 signs of forced entry documented by Boulder police officers.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and a warm welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. To understand just how silly the intruder theory is, you need to have more than a passing understanding of the labyrinth that the more than 7,000 square foot 4-story monstrosity that the Ramsey home actually is. Recently we've seen one after another in the media uncritically suckered into taking the intruder theory at face value. Some of the first insight we get into this case was from the Ramsey housekeepers. Yes, more than one housekeeper who felt consensus on one point. This crime wasn't committed by a stranger. This crime wasn't committed by an intruder. It was an inside job. Why? One of the main reasons is because a stranger simply wouldn't know what was going on in the basement, an area that more closely resembles a bunker of honeycombs, many small rooms and packing spaces, rather than a single, simple, large underground space. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at what housekeeper number 1, Linda Wilcox, said. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Number 1, is the grate the best point of ingress, or is it the worst? This is what Linda Wilcox said about it. She was asked on the Peter Boyle's radio show to talk about the window and the basement and that sort of area. The former Ramsey housekeeper responded, I may be 40% sure of this because I wasn't in that room all that much. The grate. First of all, if you're going to break into the house, that isn't where you would do it. You do it in the side door to the garage. So she offers a better alternative, a more common sense alternative to this supposed breaking an entry point in terms of the intruder theory. By the way, in terms of this theory of breaking an entry, there's actually no breaking because John says that he broke in. So you have a theory about an intruder breaking in where he doesn't actually break in. Anyway, the housekeeper goes on to say, if you move that grate and go down into that window, first of all, you're going down into a very dark room. Underneath was bookshelves just full of stuff. And just below that was this big basket with this huge Easter bunny in it. I mean, that room, it was cluttered, it was crowded, and it was dark. Not an ideal place to take anything in or out. Remember, if the intruder wants to get to JonBenet and JonBenet's bedroom, well, you're going to need to go upstairs, up. And so you want to get yourself to a staircase, in this case, a spiral staircase that will take you up to JonBenet's room. So why are you going to start off by going into the room by going down? Further, after stumbling over and through the clutter in the basement, guess where you emerge on the ground floor? Well, right opposite the front door, the main entrance to the home, and also the epicenter. There's also another staircase there, which is most likely to lead to an interception with the people you'd most like to avoid, the parents and JonBenet's brother. Incidentally, JonBenet's older brother, John Andrew, was surprised that the ransom note was left at the spiral staircase, which is not where a lot of people would move through in the home. He thought the more likely place to leave it, where it would be seen. Bear in mind, the Ramseys were supposed to decant from their home and fly somewhere else the next morning. They could easily just not have even seen that note. But if it was left at the main staircase, it would have a better chance of being seen. That's number 1. Number 2, the shortest, easiest route, or the longest, hardest route. It's a stupid question, but here it is. You're asked to break into a house full of people. You're in the house with at least 4 people. On your way out, are you going to want to take the longest possible route out, spending the longest possible time, or would you want the shortest route and time? If the intruder breaks in through the basement window and uses the suitcase to help him exit, then he's taking the longest possible route, not only to JonBenét's room, but also from it. He's also going back downstairs from the ground floor, only have to climb back up and out again. So if you want to think about this in a very simple way, think about the intruder needing to go up, but then he breaks in by going down. And then vice versa. When he's in JonBenét's room, he needs to go down to get out the house, but what he instead does is he goes somewhere where he needs to climb up. So in other words, he goes down and up. Number 3, there's no breaking and entering. The whole notion of an intruder suggests someone who comes from outside and breaks in. The Ramsey intruder certainly is an odd duck. Not only does he break in without actually breaking in, he kidnaps without kidnapping. One could even take it a step further and say, if the intent of this monster was to commit a particular type of crime against a child, well, he seems to actually forget to do that as well. The evidence is so minimal from the autopsy. One interpretation, certainly how it was interpreted in the beginning, was that it could just have been vaginitis. I don't agree with that, but that's a far cry from the sort of injuries one would expect from a real crime committed by an adult. So do you see, the problem is this: the intruder doesn't break anything because John has apparently broken it for him. Also, he somehow gets through the window not once but twice while managing to avoid scraping away a spider web, and nor does he leave behind any traces of fibers from his own clothing. Now, at the beginning of this clip, I played Paula Woodward dispelling myths about forced entry. Let's listen to a little bit more from that, and I've sourced this from Cotton Star. I'll put a link to that in the description. It's really worth listening to the whole thing.
Folks, that's a myth. No signs of forced entry. At that time, there were 8 signs of forced entry documented by Boulder police officers, including doors that had been pried open, doors that were left open, doors that were ajar, windows that were open, a broken window, a suitcase under a window, a scrape on a wall, things like that.
Now, just to be clear, and I don't think you need to be a language expert, a sign of forced entry is a sign of forced entry, something that is broken or damaged, like a broken window or broken door. So a suitcase under a wall isn't a sign of forced entry. A scrape mark on a wall is not a sign of forced entry. A door that's open, but a door that's undamaged, is not a sign of forced entry. Number 4, he forgets to leave traces of any kind. When Lou Smith demonstrated himself going through the window, he also showed how there was no space whatsoever between his hips for a spider web not to be snagged off its perch. And surely the rough, uneven, and in places sharp surfaces of that window frame with broken glass ought to have snagged some trace of clothing. Does he leave footprints outside in the packing peanuts, in the dirt, in the grit, in the leaves? No. That's odd, because in just a little grit, Burke apparently left a clearly discernible high-tech print. And you've got that same grit, if not more, not in the basement, but on the window, the outside of the windowsill area. And so seemingly the intruder forgets to leave shoe prints over there. And he has to step into that area because the grate is on top of him. So how does the intruder exit without leaving a shoe impression? Does he levitate out the window? Number 5. No! It's surrounded on all sides by windows. Lou Smith says the point of ingress is in a very secluded area, except if you pull back and you see the house from a more global perspective, you can see just what a terrible spot that actually is. If you're caught coming out the window, there's already a heavy grill imprisoning you from above. Come on, do you want to get caught? Do you enter, close it, which seals the entrance behind you? Then you have to climb in that space again, supposedly with a kicking and screaming 6-year-old child, right? And now you want to climb through there again, together, from the bottom. I'd like to see Lou Smith demonstrate that. Demonstrate taking a child out through that point of egress. In conclusion, Linda Hoffman-Pugh, housekeeper number 2, also thought that someone had to know the house very well to know where the wine cellar was. It seems shortly after the crime there was consensus from everyone, including Team Ramsey, that it had to be an inside job. And I think even the profiler said as much. That an inside job suggests a family member, a relative, a friend, someone who'd been in the house before, an employee. That is what an insider is, not an intruder, right? Which is by definition an outsider doing an outside-in job. It seems the Ramseys have successfully relied on poor memory and even poorer researching skills in the mainstream media to continue peddling what is essentially a myth, and a silly one at that. In JonBenét's America, a man says the room where JonBenet was found was so hidden that whoever killed her knew the house. Even the mayor of Boulder said so. The mayor had said, by all reports, there were no visible signs of forced entry. That's the mayor talking, and now you've just heard Paula Woodward saying, no, there were 8 signs of forced entry, and visible. The mayor said the body was found in a place where people are saying somebody had to know the house. Linda Hoffman-Pugh, the housekeeper, said, when I cleaned that house, I cleaned that basement many times, and I didn't even know that room was there. It tells me somebody had to know that house. She also said, the more I think about it, JonBenet could not have been killed by a stranger. I didn't even know that room was there. How could a stranger know to go there? How in the world did this happen? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.